So I'm going to say good morning. Happy Monday. Oh no, I'm echoing. Who's echoing? I guess I'm going to mute you first, and then I'll mute myself when you talk. So today we have such a wonderful guest with us, Mr. Ness Chakir, who's going to be our expert in all things fabulous. Oh. Not really. All things legal, though. And they are fabulous when you don't have a problem with them. They're fabulous when Shandy, when you talk about them ahead, and they're fabulous when you know what to do with them before they happen. When they're not fabulous is when you're dealing with them in the middle of them. So what we're going to talk about today, and I'm only going to talk for a second, is one of my favorite things of late: solar panels. Solar panels, as you all know, because I complain about them on a daily basis lately, are not in the contract. So the Florida Bar Association, who writes our contract, and even the attorneys who write the CRISP contract, has not found time to edit our contracts, which is shocking because they edit them all the time. Now, there are edits right now, and I have some, I'm going to share my screen really quickly. There has been a new edit that has just come out for all of you. We were going to talk about this on Monday of next week, but the new contract changes, or additions rather, the addendas have come out. Everybody see my screen? And they have released what we've been waiting for, well, two of which. One is seller broker to buyer's broker. This is the one addenda for, so you can start talking about your compensation. So that would be seller's broker to buyer's broker. This is to help us negotiate our commission in the new light of what's happening with the changes, which is August 17th. And this one is seller to buyer's broker. We're going to talk about this next week. These are the two newest addendas that have come out, and the compensation adjustments to these if there's been changes. What has not come out is the buyer broker agreements, which has now been changed to exclusive buyer tenant agreements. I do have inside information about that. We will talk about that next week. And we're waiting there, looking at changes making to Florida Bar exclusive listing agreement, and possibly changes, of course, to the purchase and sale agreements. But we will talk about these next week. So do not panic. Next Monday, we'll be going over these. So we're not going to talk about these because we have our wonderful Mr. Ness here. So I'm going to stop my share because he will share. I'm sure. Are you going to share? Do you have something to share? Yeah. But what we are going to talk about is the fact that in a regular contract, there is nothing about a solar panel at all. So if you had a contract and you didn't write anything in there, are solar panels included? We're going to talk about that with Mr. Ness because we don't know. And if you have a seller's disclosure, should they be disclosing if the solar panels are included? Well, the question is, what if there's a loan? Remember, if it's negatively affecting the value of the property, it should be included on a seller's disclosure. Ness, would you agree if there's a loan that could negatively affect the value? Heck, if there's a lease, does that negatively affect the value? But if it's not a lease, if it's not a loan, if they're just getting paid off, does it negatively affect the value? These are things I'd love you to address because I don't know the answer. So with that, I'm going to mute myself, have you unmuted, and you take it away.
Unmute. Okay. And then.
Okay, unmuted. Can you guys online hear Ness?
Share
Yes.
screen.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Yeah, you gotta share.
Yeah. Hold on. Okay, now. Do it.
Hey guys, how are you? Hopefully you guys can see my screen right now.
Can someone unmute and tell us if you hear Ness online?
Yes.
I can hear him.
Someone?
Yes, I can hear him.
I don't think they can hear.
They can.
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you guys hear Ness?
Yes, I can hear him.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Ness, you have to turn up your volume.
Oh, okay. Good. Hopefully you guys can hear me. For those of you guys who haven't met me, my name is Ness. I am a real estate attorney by trade. My firm, the Florida Closing Attorney, we are mostly a real estate company, a closing company, essentially. Handle all things real estate as well. And then we also do some probate as well. And recently we started doing 1031 exchanges as well. So that's always been, that's been a pretty good experience so far. If you guys have any questions, feel free to stop and let me know. Those are, it doesn't bother me at all. I can stop talking and then you guys can let me know what your questions are. So feel free to stop me anytime you want. Today we're going to be talking about solar panels. And I've actually been seeing, strangely, I've been seeing a lot of issues with solar panels in within like the last year. I recently had someone who got overcharged on their solar panels by a lot, and it was actually a friend of his who sold him the solar panels. Next thing you know, that it looked like the friend was signed on behalf of the owner, because those things can be e-signed. They didn't have their documents, and it was like a $60,000 bill. Most likely the sales rep, who happens to be a friend, probably made about $30,000. So really those things, when you see like a crazy amount, like $56,000, a lot of times that's just, the sales rep, the guys that knock on your door, the guys that knock on people's doors, they end up, upcharging that cost. So when you guys come and want to sell this property that has solar panels, you end up having like a big, like a hefty amount. And typically what I've seen, those deals fall through. Pretty much, I think I've only seen like one deal that actually closed. Most of them, when it's like a big amount, they just fall through. And a lot of times sellers don't actually know the cost of it until they get to the closing table. And then they find out, when we get this payoff amount, they find out that it's a lot of money. And then there's an uncomfortable conversation that a realtor has to have with the seller. And typically the next thing is, ask the buyer if they're willing to pay something, so, help out. And, usually the buyer just goes to the next property and they end up canceling. So it's a pretty serious issue that you guys are gonna see more and more, especially when more houses now have solar panels than before. Any questions we can start with?
We'll have many.
I'm sure you will, yeah. So let's talk about questions to ask before, your listing agreement, essentially. Definitely before contract, but I think you guys want to ask these questions at your listing agreement, or at your listing presentation. Do you whether you own the solar panels, or are they leased? If they own them, that's the best case scenario. If they're leased, or they're financed, that's, that complicates things a little bit.
Is that the same thing?
No.
Leased but wait a second.
Yeah.
Leased. This is the tricky part. If they're leased.
Right.
Or if they're owned but have a payment.
Payment.
Is that the same thing or not?
Some leasing allows you to get out of it easier than finance.
And they pull it off?
Yeah, they can pull it off, yeah.
But for price.
Yeah, there's something that they have to do. There's usually a price, and it's not as easy to pull it off.
I have a contract of a lease,
okay.
and they make them pay out the
Yeah.
entire lease. And that one was $51,000. It was, and you don't own it, and you don't have a warranty on your lease. And yes, so no, it was.
Yeah, a lot of those contracts are ridiculous, and like I said, like it's almost like a scam.
It is a scam. You have to pay the lease for 40 years, but you only have a warranty for 20. Oh, I have that lease if anybody would like to see it. Anybody?
Yeah.
Another question.
Sure.
So I have a client who has a $60,000 set of solar panels. And she pays $137 a month on that. Like I tried to do the math, and it's something like infinity to pay the solar panels off. I mean,
Yes.
It's not even in her lifetime. And they said it's transferable, but the I don't know if I'm saying that right. The lease stays at $60,000, but then just your electric bills are always $137. So how do you quantify that to people?
Did you see the lease?
No.
Okay, because is it a lease or is it a loan? Because the lease that I have goes up 5% a year. And what she pays with the electric company is variable dependent on the electric company.
Mm.
And the lease does not guarantee new solar panels. So you could be getting old solar panels.
Right, right.
Surprise.
She can get a copy of the lease agreement from the finance company.
I asked her and she's like, well, I don't really remember signing it. And
Oh,
she's
she
like,
did.
So,
she's like, where is it?
Right, a lot of times those are e-signed. E-sign, there's no like rule, like, when you buy real estate, there are certain rules that we have to follow to make sure that you know what you're buying and selling. But as far as solar panels, it's not regulated. So what you literally are having people do is things are being e-signed. And then you don't know who's e-signing them. Is it that person? Is it the sales rep? Is it someone that just put like a signature? And then the financing companies, those guys, they'll finance it just because there's a property in it. I mean, the property attached to it. So worst case scenario, if that person doesn't pay, they go after the property. So it's kind of like a win-win situation for them.
I also saw a lease that when you transfer it, the lease starts over.
Wow.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Best to get the lease and get it to an attorney.
It's
Because,
best to
Absolutely.
never touch a lease.
Yeah.
well, I know her house is worth $250 and she's got a $60,000.
Oh my God, yeah. Wow.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I'm like, how do
The question is, Ness, can they hire you to sue the company that?
Yeah.
So it's actually becoming like a big business for lawyers to go after solar panels and those companies.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, the lawyers that are doing it, they're just inundated. I mean, it's a huge business right now.
It's worse than.
Yeah, it really is. It's way worse. At least timeshare, you're dealing with reputable companies,
Yeah.
like, the big names, and those guys have a name behind them, so they don't want to mess it up and all that. So you can play with them. But these solar panels, a lot of times they don't care, and then they're being financed by property. But I do believe there are loopholes that a lawyer can pinpoint, like especially these agreements. Because if it's e-signed, you can probably make an argument that I don't know who signed it. I didn't sign it. Who did? And then a lot of times, if you push back hard enough, they'll just kind of delete it. Like, okay, yeah, this never happened. I actually had a client, we got it to that level because they couldn't actually find the contract.
Wow.
Yeah, they just couldn't find it. There's something is recorded that says there are solar panels, but the company cannot find where there's contract, like what's the financing agreement, what are they doing? So, but that's a scam, that's just. And then the guy who sold them on the solar panels, he's out of the country basically.
Yeah.
They can't find him. Yeah, he bailed out. They can't find him. And yeah.
Can we put together a list of lawyers that we can use, for example, if
Mhm.
your client is in a pickle,
Mhm.
if they could recommend
Sure,
for solar panels or timeshare or any of those big things.
sure.
The other thing is, are there any reputable solar panel companies? Because we're in Florida and
Mhm.
I'm from German descent, and everyone in Germany has solar panels, so they have no sun.
Right,
So,
right.
I mean, we're in Florida, it just makes sense to have them, but it's just not being done correctly by these con artists
Right,
that make $30,000 for a sale, that, 50% commission.
Sure,
So
yeah.
are there any reputable companies?
The reality is that you can literally buy solar panels on your own and then hire someone to install them, and there you go.
That
You know,
would be the best way.
Yeah, as far as solar panel companies, a lot of times the installers will probably do that job for you. They will just, you can get like a contractor that's an installer as well. And then that contract can probably get you solar panels and install them because, at least you have someone to go after, someone with a license. But like, honestly, like solar panel, I don't know who maybe Tesla's solar panels, but those are pretty expensive too.
Yeah. Is Tesla different than any of the traditional, or my clients bought it, but it was new construction, but
Mhm.
when you're selling, is it different selling with the Tesla solar panels? Something?
Probably the name.
Really says a name.
Yeah, it has a name that you can
I've
pick one
never
too.
seen any of their contracts. I
Yeah.
know they're better.
Yeah, I've never seen it either. I mean,
And
Probably
the solar
cost-
panels
Yeah,
are paid off. That's one of the things that I wanted to know.
I'm sorry, what was it?
If solar panels
Oh,
are
yeah,
paid off,
paid off, yeah.
is that just like a normal contract that don't even pay attention to them as if they're not there? Or?
Well, if they're paid off, it's great from the transfer standpoint. It's just easier to transfer. We just, put together, like a bill, kind of like a bill of sale, transferring those solar panels to the next, buyer. But also, now you gotta find out, you gotta inspect them too. I mean, are they working?
Yeah,
There are all those hosts of issues that you gotta, and then what's the warranty on them? But at the very least, theoretically, they wouldn't really cause any major issue at the closing because they are transferable. It's just the finance one, the lease ones, and we have PPA as well. Those are purchase agreements as well. Those can create issues that typically honestly lead to closings not happening. You end up losing that buy because there are a host of issues.
You still want them in your contract. though,
Yeah.
Because,
I did it once and I didn't do a bill of sale. We added it to the contract.
Yeah.
We
Right,
didn't
and it's-
No, you gotta put
identify
them, you should put them in the contract, yeah.
But there is no specific agenda for that, for paid off.
Florida Realtors Bar Association has not written one addenda. They've not added it to the contract, so there is none.
Mm,
Maybe Ness, you could give us some language.
Sure,
That would be great.
yeah, sure.
That would be said, then we can add it to clauses and then
Mhm.
we'll have language that you can add if there is solar panels and if they're being.
Yeah, absolutely.
We do have an addenda, solar panel addenda that is now in there in case we need that, but if you
Okay.
could just give us some
Okay.
language.
Yeah, absolutely.
Carrie, to circle back around what you just said, this is important. Whether they're paid off or not, they go in the contract.
Yes,
And. if
and
they're
then
paid
add the
off-
solar panel addenda regardless.
So if they're paid off, does it look like at the end of the contract, the little square checked solar panel addendum? Or is there specific language that we have to put at the end of the contract?
So
that
Ness
says-
will give us language, but it will say something to the effect of, with better language from Ness, that
Mhm.
buyer and seller agree the home will be conveyed with solar panels at no additional cost to buyer. something
Sure,
like
yeah,
that.
that's
Okay.
well put, yeah.
I didn't know.
Well,
Mm.
if you don't, are solar panels coming? Great,
Mhm.
we don't know.
Yeah. But
We don't
does the
know.
Verbiage need to also include that they're being sold as is.
Well, that's why we're gonna go to Ness. and he's
Yeah,
gonna
and I
give
mean,
us-
they have to be sold as is. I mean, hopefully there's some sort of a warranty. Typically those warranties are transferable. But that's kind of what it is. I mean, it's, and then it's the buyer's job to inspect them and make sure that they're working properly.
We're gonna get
Uh,
the language from Ness. He's
yeah.
gonna give it to me. and I'm gonna add it in a clause. So that way, if you have it, you just add the clause right.
Right,
without it.
Sure,
Speaking of issues, I've never met a roofer that likes solar.
Solar,
panels
yeah.
on
No.
roofs,
Mm.
So I have just opens a whole new. can of
Well,
Yes.
remember, if you have a solar panel roof, you have no warranty on that roof.
Right.
There is no warranty. I've never seen anyone who has kept a warranty on a roof with a solar panel.
sure.
It's been voided as soon as you put solar panels on it.
And I know there are insurance issues as well too. So, few insurance companies like to insure properties with solar panels. So I mean, it's hard to see the positives in solar panels, but
I can't find them. By the way, as we learned in Meet the Bear, but they do not increase the value of your home. They will not ever give you an increase unless one day there are so many solar panels that are all paid off
yeah,
that you can compare two like-kind homes with solar panel roofs all paid off. And then you could say, oh, this home exactly the same as this home, both have solar panels, both paid off. Then maybe you could give a value for them,
Hmm.
but we are nowhere near that day. And so, no, there is no value given for solar panels. But if they're solar panels and they have some kind of a lien or lease, then there's a negative.
yeah,
Just know that.
yeah, there's a negative, yes. Unfortunately.
Continue.
You need to find like better way to tell yourself, say you weren't scammed, like, if the one doesn't say you were scammed, it's a negative and that's it. You gotta-
Well, you can't say that because that's a bad thing to say.
Mm,
In other words, it's.
Unfortunately, in the state of Florida so far, they're just not very common, so they do not add any value in your appraisal. And
My seller told me, well, everybody in my neighborhood has them, and literally, I think 90% has it. You know,
That doesn't add.
are they paid off?
I know,
Are they paid off?
no, we didn't sell.
Exactly. Well, if they're not paid off, it doesn't add any value in your appraisal.
Until they're. the way
If it's
I
paid
feel-
off, then,
Yeah,
you know,
if it's
you're,
paid off and
you
the
got
money's
something
back,
to,
you Pay the whole thing
yeah.
at once.
Right, right.
But still, the neighbors all have to be paid
It,
off.
it might be,
Oh, right, yeah, right.
it might be a value to that buyer if you tell them, hey, you don't have to pay, you know, you don't have that solar, you know, you don't have to, you can save money on your solar, on your electric bill, yeah, so in the scheme of things. Right, and then that's the other issue as well. If the roof is a newer roof, then you got like a, you know, it's better, but if it's an old roof, then you're looking
Yeah.
at someone removing them.
We
and-
take them off, guys, just so you know.
Oh my
We
god.
had it priced out. Don't ask me why, but yeah,
That's just off.
just to take them off.
Yeah.
Not to put it back on.
Yeah,
Don't ask me where I know that number from, but that was a real cost.
That's going up there a little bit. We can pay that ourselves.
No. We didn't price that one out, but we thought about it. But that was the hospital bill, so we needed a big ladder and it's just too much.
And there are issues with leaking as well, sometimes they do
Yeah.
leak, so.
Difference between having them already paid off before you sell the home, or having it paid off at closing.
Yes.
That's a great.
I mean, from the closing standpoint, it's just a matter of paying them off at closing. It doesn't really make that much of an issue. It's just for the title company to handle that part of paying it off at closing. But it doesn't really change a whole lot, you know, from that perspective, as long as they're paid off.
Is it usually a time period that they give them to pay it off? Like, is it depending on the leaseholder or the lien holder, how long they give them to pay it off? At
Well,
closing?
the financed one is just, you know, you ask for a payoff information and then they give you like the payoff.
But
and
isn't
then
there
the-
usually a lien on the property?
Yeah, there's a lien. There's always gonna be a lien on the property. And then once you pay it off, the lien is released.
So if the buyer's getting financing, you
All right.
can't usually buy a property that has a lien on it. So how does that work?
Well, if the buyer is getting financing and then you're gonna be paying that off at closing, that doesn't really change a whole lot because those are gonna be paid off at closing. The lien is gonna be
Release that.
released at closing, correct, yeah. And speaking of this specific issue is that when when the buyer is getting financing and there's a lien on the property from the solar panel, that really changed the whole lot from the lender standpoint. I'm gonna talk about it on my on one of the slides.
Okay.
but-
well, that's
Okay.
good.
But we'll talk about that as well. That actually
Yeah.
complicates
Sure,
things.
yes, no,
So yeah, if they're financed, what's the plan? Are we gonna be paying off the debt? Will you ask the buyer to assume the debt at closing? Buyer's lender may not allow the buyer to assume the debt, even if they wanted to. So that's an additional thing that we're gonna talk about.
They wouldn't allow, I'm sorry, they wouldn't allow it because they don't qualify for the loan? Or is it
Correct.
because
Or
it's
maybe
just-
debt to income?
Yeah, it's usually that's the income to debt ratio.
Mm.
How much are you financing? So there are a lot of questions that this becomes a debt now. So it
Mhm.
has to all become included in there and how they qualify you.
Like, for example, we had a house in Kissimmee where a lot of first-time home buyers were buying. Well, how are you gonna get a first-time home buyer to qualify for the home and the solar panel?
It's all bad. Right. Correct, yeah.
We couldn't sell.
So, and if they are leased, the question that you want to ask your buyer, do you plan on ending the lease early? Or you want to sign the lease to the buyer? So those are questions that you want to ask. So all these are questions that you guys want to talk about at your listing agreement or listing presentation, so to speak. Any questions?
I don't mean to say this, but I think somebody just put in the chat that you muted everyone or something. I don't know if they had.
Oh, let me,
I don't know. There's something in the chat. I just.
so how are people, it was just a question from Sue?
I think you have all muted, so we can't chime in to ask questions. Oh, can you unmute people? Can you unmute yourself?
Let's see.
I didn't unmute.
What did I do?
You should just unmute.
Ugh.
If I do it, then he can't be muted. So if I put myself, see. Then you have to be muted. You can be muted, I'll just come.
So do I mute?
Just mute.
Mute.
No problem. I mean, just wanted to let you know, I'm just like you, a little exhausted here. You know how it is.
I don't. All right, let's. Anybody else need to mute here?
Because I've been pushing for this.
You have them raise their hands and they have a question.
Yeah, why don't we just have questions on the chat?
Okay,
Yeah, let's just do the question on the chat.
just,
So you've been-
can you guys on the chat here?
I know there was someone, I think Sue asked a question.
I cannot read it, it's too small. Kara, can you see it?
I
Oh
can,
my God, I'm like, so how?
how are people, yeah, how are people who currently have solar panels insured? Or is the insurance term that's an issue? So as far as the insurance part, there are just very few insurance companies who will insure a roof with solar panels. So you kind of, there's somebody, there are companies out there, but they're very limited. And most likely, it's gonna cost you more just because of that. Those companies, they know, so you're basically paying more to insure a house with solar panels versus a house that doesn't have solar panels.
That's crazy.
So hopefully that answers that.
Okay, so if you guys have more questions, put it in the chat because we're watching it. Carrie's watching.
You're welcome.
Because she can see
Should have brought my glasses.
better than I can. So tiny.
So let's talk about the different types of ownership of solar panels. Owned panels, those are pretty straightforward. You kind of you bought them, or you finance them and then you pay them off. So those are yours. They are part of the property and will be transferred to the new owner. Pretty straightforward. Then you have leased panels. Now, the lease panels, you have a lease agreement that must be transferred to the new homeowner. And typically this requires the leasing company to approve your agreement. Now, they'll always approve it. Essentially, there could be some transfer fees. Every company is different, but that's also something that's pretty straightforward. The lease agreements, you really have to have someone take a look at them. I mean,
They're horrible.
yeah, horrible. Yeah. So there you go.
I have one. Happy to share.
Now sometimes you're gonna have those homeowners that have what's called a power purchase agreement. Essentially what that is that you have a power producer who goes out and has builds, let's say they own like a land and then they're gonna just have a solar essentially this picture here. What you're seeing in this picture is kind of like a solar panel farm. Yeah, farm, exactly. And with that farm, you have some sort of an agreement that says, I'm gonna be buying power from you typically it's between 5 and 5 and 20 years at a set price. Now that's good. That could be good. That could be bad. It's good if it's good for the homeowner if the bill is if you don't use as much power or as much energy, or if you use too much and then you're paying less. But also if the energy becomes cheaper, then it's not good for the homeowner because they're overpaying for what the next homeowner is paying for. So essentially it's good and bad, but those are the typical agreements that you're gonna see. Any questions?
So the PPA, it's
PPA.
not on their house?
It's It's an agreement, really. I mean, it's not on the house. Yeah, it's not on the, it's on the farm.
Okay, so they're just paying for the solar panel.
Yeah, to be used, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you get out of this?
They can, but it's also hard to get out of it, yeah. Because, think about this with this farm, the solar farm, they're relying on
So
all
it's
these,
instead of being with Duke, they're being with the PPA.
correct, yeah,
Mhm.
correct.
So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you still have to have, because I've had sellers where they have like a usage charge with Duke Energy, I don't know. anything about
Right,
solar
they do like 30 bucks,
So do
yeah,
they
yeah,
still have to have, they always will have a use?
right,
Is that something we need to disclose to the buyer as well, that there is gonna be a small
usage.
usage charge from Duke Energy in addition to the?
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt actually to disclose it because this is something that the buyer wouldn't know about them on their own. So if they wouldn't know about it by just, inspecting property, then you should definitely tell them, yeah.
Solar panel amendment too.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
How do they go on to a title as like a lien? And how does that attach to the lien? Is it like a builder or a contractor lien?
Mechanics.
Or?
I'm sorry, repeat that again.
How does the lien attach? In what
So,
order does it-
Right, so the lien it's kind of like a, how do I say this? You have liens that are like a mortgage, basically, right? That's pretty straightforward. And then, but these liens, they go on it's like a different database.
Mhm.
And we, as a title company, we have access to the database, so we can see those things. Because these are our personal, kind of like a personal property.
Mhm.
So you have to record them in a different database.
Okay,
So it wouldn't be like you're recording a mortgage.
right.
It will be a different database.
Like if a roofer put a thing on or a
Right,
pool
like a
company,
builder.
it'd be like a mechanics lien.
Okay,
Well, the mechanics lien is the contractors,
right.
right? But this is like a personal property. A personal property is essentially a different database that
So
you,
like somebody put up a pool cage?
See, a pool cage, typically those are mechanics lien. Yeah, those are come with the contract. But when you just record, like a personal property, like a thing that you're installing, solar panels, it's just a different database that you do it. Yeah.
Interesting. But is it still in the same order, still third
It's still what?
order? So
Um,
taxes, obviously mortgages, and then. Or would it?
Yes, they will be the last one, actually. Yeah. So the mortgage, that's why mortgage companies, when they see this, they want to be in the first order. Yeah, because if they come after the solar panels, then they will be the second order.
Except if they use a PACE loan, and that's
Yes.
why they hate them.
Yeah, the PACE loans, that's another, that opens a can of worms, actually.
Yeah, that does, yeah.
Any questions? Yeah, that's a good question too, yeah. So when we talk about paid off versus finance versus lease solar panels, paid off, those are pretty straightforward. Again, you bought them, you had a loan on them, and then you paid them off. So and then there's usually like a release that gets filed as well. Finance, you have a solar panel company that's kind of like either financing it themselves or they have a third party who's financing it. So now there are lenders who are only in the business of financing solar panels. So that's kind of another business as well that's happening. Now, lease solar panels, they come with their kind of like their set of questions, as I mentioned on my slide. They can either be assigned to the new owner, or they can be paid off. When they're paid off, they can become yours when you pay them off. But if you don't pay them off, then they're still lease essentially. So, and then, Carrie, like, she's seen more lease. I haven't had a chance to look at lease.
I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I haven't, hasn't gotten to my plate yet, but, I'm sure there are a host of issues, that make them unattractive as well for the new buyer. Yeah. But they do run for many years, and they're not really easy to be paid off. So
40-year lease,
yeah,
and they only have a 20-year warranty.
Yeah, so when those sales reps, they come knocking on the door and say, hey, you know, if you're
Right.
gonna get those solar panels, you're only gonna be paying $100, $150. You know, that's kind of how they do it. You know, they basically extend it, 40, 50 years, and they're like, okay, well,
And then they tell you that it's contingent, you can cancel.
Oh,
mm,
yeah.
And then they say until
Yeah.
they come to install, then they call you and say, hey, my installer's in the area, which waives your contingency.
yeah.
Mhm.
Like I
did it to
said,
my
those are
neighbor.
not regulated at all,
That's
so
what I
they
got.
can say whatever they want to say, and then people trust them, unfortunately.
Have any of you been approached for that as realtors and they'll give you?
But it's,
No.
Like when I'm getting a new phone, the AT&T guy also has.
So, but yeah, everybody is a solar, yeah. My electrician is as well. Oh, I do kind of solar panels too.
People are lucky to have not approached me. I'll send them to your house. They will cry.
Yeah, I kick them out as well. Like when I get those, I typically just tell them this is a scam,
What's your mother's name? What's her phone number? I'll call her. You should be very ashamed of your son.
So transfer of agreements, typically those are for leases or PPA transfer. So those can be transferred to the new owner. But there are specific conditions that need to be met to be transferred. And typically, typically there are fees that needs to be paid off. And what I'm also finding out is that, sometimes there are credit requirements too. So they do check for those. Now, as far as this disclosure, you definitely do need to disclose as much as possible. My suggestion would be to have that agreement handy, and have that reviewed by the buyer during the inspection period. So that way, this doesn't become an issue after the inspection period, and the buyer wants to get out afterwards. So this is something that you guys should be mindful of.
I would also recommend, guys, I want you, if you have a seller who has solar panels that has a lease or a loan on them, to put it on the seller's disclosure.
Where,
Other.
where on this color system?
Under other, an update, under update, because they added solar panels, but they also put it with either a lease or a lien. It's not like they've added value to their home, right, where they've paid for it. Now they have encumbered their house with these solar panels. So they have to put it as an update. They put what they owe on it and what that transfer would be. Add that to the seller's disclosure. That's just one other way they're disclosing that the buyer will receive when they receive their contract.
Right.
Now, is it our job to fill out the seller's disclosure? No. But you should tell them, listen, if you have solar panels, that is definitely something that you're expecting someone to pay. You should be adding that to your seller's disclosure. Would you agree with that?
Of course, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, disclose, yeah.
And there's nothing on that solar panel addendum that we have that talks about the usage charge.
Well, they're supposed to contact, the buyer is supposed to contact the company and get all the information. It's not up to the seller to get all that information, because they're supposed to contact and fill out the application. They're supposed to find
But
all
I
that
don't know if
information.
the solar panel company tells them that maybe they tell them they have to have a usage account with their local.
Sure, yeah.
electric company.
Every seller I've ever had has been so proud of the solar panel and looked at it as a feature. They wanted me to tell them. And so it was hard. I don't want them to be mad at me when I explained to them that it could be complicated, but they wanted me to put it in the description because it had, in their mind, it added so much value. So I've never had a seller be like, don't, they did like, here's the everything, here's what I paid. No, never. So I don't know. I had to deal with all the hard because the buyer couldn't get to financing.
Right.
They didn't understand it also.
Yeah. Typically those, most of those deals will fall through, with solar panels involved, yeah.
So when it was a listing presentation, I like to get the listing right there, right? And I don't want to overwhelm them with too many things.
That's fine. You could get it after, because you usually leave the seller's disclosure for them to fill in.
And then the seller doesn't want to give me the information. He's like, I'm telling you, I'll pay $20 a month for my bill. I'm like,
That's fine.
okay. That's. Of course, the bill part we never sold, but still, how do you circumvent something?
It's not that you gotta get how much they're paying for the bill. You have to find out how much they owe. That's what you have to get. That's the
He was
information.
looking out
piece.
letter and that's it. He's like, it's transferable. I'm like, okay, can we speak to them? Because now we're, we're getting close to being under contract.
He can
And he
call the
said no.
solar panel company.
It
and
is
get
the
them
seller's
authorization.
job to get that information, just like it's the seller's job to get you the HOA or the condo association information, because we're not party to that. We do way too much, guys. We are overstepping our bounds all the time. And frankly, every time we do that, we put ourselves in jeopardy. Because when we do that and we don't have the right information or we didn't get enough information, now we're the ones that are liable for that.
Mm. They will always point fingers at you.
Yeah,
So you're
That's-
saying that the buyer, it's the buyer's job to do their due diligence on the HOA and on the solar panel company?
no, it's the
This is-
Oh,
seller's
the
job.
seller's job,
Because
okay.
it's the
So
seller
provide-
who's a member of the HOA.
Okay.
It's the seller who
Got it.
has that
Of
information.
course, yeah.
The seller has to disclose that. It's not your job, though. Are
Mm.
you the member of the HOA? No. You tell the seller, this is what they have to get you. If they want to sell their home, they got to get you this information. Not the day you get them to sign the listing agreement, agreed. The day after.
And you have to explain, this is my next slide, you have to explain to the seller that this is a material fact about the property. This isn't just, yeah, because they think, sellers, they think, they think that just having solar panels is kind of like, is competing with the next property for whatever reason. So they naturally feel like this is a great asset to whoever's gonna buy it. But they don't understand that really it's another debt, it's a debt essentially. You're asking someone to take over somebody's debt because it's rare when those are paid off. So you're asking someone to take on that liability. And sometimes solar panels, they don't work. Sometimes there's not enough, there are too much clouds, so you don't get enough electricity. So there are a lot of questions that, you kind of have to, in a way, educate them about solar panels and make them give you those answers because, those are material facts. You have to disclose those things. And if you just miss out one simple, if you disclose A, B, C, and then you don't disclose D, then that not disclosing D is big enough to kind of kill the deal and can get a buyer to get out, so that is that's kind of the irony of it, is that they do have to disclose everything.
And remember, if the house costs 800 and the solar panels are 40, the buyer's paying 840 for the house.
Exactly.
They're not paying 800
Yeah.
and getting solar panels. They're paying
Our
840.
recommendation to seller, should it be like, I don't listing when the seller says, oh, okay, I have the solar panels, we're just gonna transfer it. Should we just tell them, so it's hard to transfer? We should.
Yeah,
consider paying it off our
Explain to
bill.
them that transferring it complicates the deal.
Yeah.
And they're more likely than not, a buyer will not want to go through this because this is a complication. And I'm sure I'm sure you guys know this, buyers, they don't like complications. If it's complicated, then they're like, okay, well, this is not worth it anymore. So, that is a problem. Also, warranties are important as well. Like, are they working? Like, how long is the warranty? Because sometimes solar panels, they don't work, so that is something that you want to ask your seller about. And you absolutely need to find the terms of the agreement. They have to provide you with the contract. And honestly, yeah, sometimes as a realtor, is it worth, your time is valuable. Is it worth, just going through this and then, because I'm sure you can foresee where this is gonna head. It's like, okay, you're not giving me this information. I'm gonna get a buyer. He's gonna he or she's gonna ask all this information. You don't want to give it to me. It's the fault that he's gonna fall through, and then I just wasted all this time,
Yeah, but we
and
already
funds.
policy at that point.
Yeah, at that point you already do. But it's a question for you guys to consider, and
Whatsoever on the S.
So to be clear, there is no solar panel regulation, correct, on the solar panel?
no, it's not regulated at all. Yeah, there's just no.
Fire inspections, I'm assuming there's an extra cost to inspect the panels themselves for proper function.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think there are inspectors out there that can do that. I mean, that can inspect so I think a roofer should be able to come in and inspect them. Because what you're looking for, I would say, when you go up there, you're looking to see if they're properly tight, I mean, there are no leaks. But you also want the system performance, which I'm sure you can find out just going online. Because you want to know, like I'm talking about it here, like, what are the maintenance history, warranties, and also like how much, typically how much energy do you get per day or per month? So those things you can find out, by just looking at, I'm sure there's an app, that they have, but you probably want like a roofer to go up there and see how, how much, how they look up there,
And remember, guys, solar panels are still new in our industry. None of this is set. We don't have, oh, you go here for this inspection and you go here.
Correct.
This is not
Yeah.
something we have. That's the
Right.
problem.
Right. Yeah. But, we're getting there, and I'm sure, the industry is gonna flourish a little bit, and then you're gonna find more, yeah. You're gonna find more help, essentially. Any questions? All right. Carrie did talk a little bit about the, the property value and how much it adds value. I mean, you guys know this more than I do, and sometimes it can increase value, but I think, in my opinion, it depends on if they're paid off or not. So, that's that kind of.
I have yet to see one add anything to any
so-
appraisal. And I run 4 offices.
And for.
And I mean, listen, that's why I brought in Lisa Barefoot, and she says the same thing. And the reason is, as she said, and I will state it one more time, when you get the value for a pool, it's because you see the same kind home, same square footage, same bedrooms, same bathrooms within, 1 mile of the property. And then you say, okay, they both have a pool. And then you figure out how much the pool costs. Right? So you'd have to find same like kind property, same bedroom, same bathroom, same community within a mile. And they both have to have paid off solar panels. Where do we find that? We have not found that. That's the problem. So until this becomes something very common where you start
Wow.
seeing that,
Interesting.
we're not going to be seeing any kind of value coming from solar panels. That's the problem. Maybe some of these communities where builders are including solar panels, the problem is that they're not paid off. That's the problem. So because builders are including them as options.
So they just don't do any adjustments?
No,
But if the front has a sauna, it could be like an old, it's not very rare,
but
how many?
they're not including a solar panel because who else has the solar panels paid off? Nobody. That's the problem. Yep, nobody's including them as value.
I have a question.
Sure.
On the tax credits, if you have a home that's 1 or 2 years, you may have 3 years of tax credits on solar panels that the government is subsidizing, right? So what happens then on the transaction?
I don't think they're even doing that anymore.
The tax credit,
Yeah, they're not doing the tax credits anymore.
the 30%?
I think that.
Duke's not doing that anymore. No, they're not doing.
You mean the federal government
Yeah.
or the you're talking about the federal government?
The
What
federal
was that?
government, yes.
Because I knew we were doing this, it's kind of long, but I screenshotted this. Right? I'm just gonna read the part. Per the sellers, the solar company promised them all kinds of tax credits.
Sure.
And they signed the loan documents. Unfortunately, there is a document that states the solar company does not guarantee tax credits. This couple has a VA loan and they can't afford, it's like $81,000 loan on solar credits.
So the solar costs $80,000?
$81,000 loan for solar,
How big is the house?
3,000
Oh,
with a
that-
ground floor.
Yeah, it's
Through the
just like,
coals. And also, I'll tell you something, on a lease, by the way, there are no solar credits to the person because it goes to the company that owns them.
sure,
It's also in the contract.
Yeah, VA loan.
yeah. So you don't get the credit, yeah.
You don't get the credit because you don't own it. Goes to the company who owns it.
So
Which is-
my understanding on the IRS federal side, what I read is there's supposed to be like a $30,000, 30% credit that you get. But I'm also finding out that, and I'm kind of realizing this, is that there's a difference, which I'm surprised, there's a difference between US citizens and somebody who has a green card. Not everyone, I think it's US citizens versus, like, so citizenship does make a difference for that credit, which which I'm kind of finding out on my own. So,
you-
so,
if you're gonna
so
have-
some people are finding this out too. Like there was a client who kind of just realized it too. They were like, no, we didn't get this solar credits, from the government because apparently there's a citizenship requirement.
And they break that into 3 years as opposed to 130% tax credit the following year. That's what I understood. when they
Okay,
tried to fix
that I didn't know. I mean, I thought it was just the next year you filed your taxes, you get the credit, but it could be, yeah, it could be over 3 years. I don't know a whole lot on
I've not heard anybody who's
Yeah.
gotten that, so I can't speak to
Yeah.
that. I do know, though, that it says very clearly in the leasing agreement that you don't get it.
Mhm.
Nope. Because it would only go if there are any credits, bless you.
So if
To
you
the
don't own
company
them.
that owns it,
Yeah, because we don't own them yet, yeah.
bless you. And even when you buy it, if you buy it, it still wouldn't have gone to you because it would have gone to the person who first purchased it, which would be the
Correct, yeah,
company that bought it.
correct, yeah,
Oh, that was-
correct,
Mhm.
yeah.
So he doesn't
So you're-
transfer to the new owner.
No.
Yeah, you don't get the credit, yeah, you only get the credit when you buy, if you get the credit when you buy, yeah.
No, no.
Any recommendations for when we represent buyers who want to buy a house and a sale?
Run.
If there's a PA or FHA loan, should we just tell them no, you can't, or is?
No, I
there
think
any
it depends.
on that?
It depends if the seller's paying it off.
Right,
This is, I mean, you have to let them know that there's gonna be no warranty on their roof, which, by the way, in a VA, it's gonna depend on that inspection of the roof, right? But, if the solar panels are included at no cost to the buyer, I don't think it's a problem. If it's a FHA and there's a cost to the buyer, they may not get approved on that. I mean, that could be a big problem right there.
yeah,
So that's where we had a home in Kissimmee, who was it? I think it was Shane. We couldn't sell that house. Because it was a 2,200 square foot, they had a $40,000 solar panel on there. Couldn't
Wow.
sell the home. It was over improved for the area.
Remember when we talked to Maria last week
Mhm.
about we were talking about, because I have sellers that have solar panel and they have a certain portion to pay off. But she was saying something, you might want to talk to the lender and how each company works. Because she said something like you might be able to get it covered.
Well, we were talking about if you got a second mortgage,
Second.
if you took the first and you did a, FHA, that's a little different. That's not convoluted here.
Yeah.
But yeah. But the point is, guys, that it's not to say they're terrible. I mean,
right,
it's just to say they're very
complicated,
complicated
yeah.
and they better be in the contract appropriately, fully disclosed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the ones that really get those solar panels, they kind of almost commit themselves to that house for at least 10 years, I would say. At least 10 years, you gotta commit to that too. But I've seen a lot of them, they just get the solar panels and then they want to sell it, they want to sell their house 3-4 years later. And
Make money.
then it's a losing situation,
Mhm.
so but we kind of talked a little bit about the liens and how it is, but so typically those are solar liens. And like I said, you kind of find that there's a specific a database where you can find them because they're personal property. At closing, we do have to make sure that they are taken care of. And some way, somehow, we kind of have to come to that. We come to it essentially. The ones that we've done, really, we've paid it off at closing. And that's been pretty straightforward. But if there are any of those, and we talked about when there's a buyer that has getting financing, that really does complicate it even more. So it can create like issues for the buyer and for the title company trying to handle it. If you guys do have these solar panels and then the seller is set on selling it, talk to your title company, talk to your legal professional, and just to get some ideas out there to get them ready for this. If it is going to be a lot, I mean, you guys can probably foresee that the seller doesn't want to budge, it's too expensive, and then you're kind of limiting yourselves to selling this property. So does it really make any more sense it probably doesn't, because nobody's gonna do what needs to be done to close it essentially. And this solar panel is gonna stay there. You could get lucky and find a buyer who's gonna take over it. I mean, but I haven't really seen someone yet who does that.
Not the price that they want, that's a problem.
Yeah, or the price, yeah, they want, yeah.
Could there be two liens in the property, one from the contractor and one from the solar company?
No, typically it's just one company who does everything, yeah. So they're the ones who are handling
Or
the
two for the solar liens. We have that too.
2 solar liens,
Yep.
Yes.
like maybe like 2 actual
One for
lenders.
38,000.
Ah, okay, I see. I see. So they had 2
I sink in my chair.
Okay, so yeah, so that's fine when you have 2 people financing it or 2 companies financing it.
Why would you get 2 solar liens?
Maybe they don't have
But
someone sees it.
usually on a contractor, you have the guy that does the company you contract with.
Yeah.
And then you have a contractor that they subcontract to come do the installation.
Right.
The subcontractor doesn't get paid, but he
Yeah.
did the job, so he goes
Yes.
and files a lien
Sure.
against you, and then you have the solar company.
Sure.
file a lien against, you have 2 liens against your property.
That's a possibility. Yeah, I've never seen it. But that's a possibility, yeah.
Hmm.
That's a possibility. Yeah,
Haven't seen it either. but-
yeah. It could happen down the line, yeah.
Hmm.
It could happen down the line. And then you sometimes have, actually, this is a thing where the solar company goes bankrupt.
Oh,
And
wow.
then you have, you're like this, who's getting these warranties?
Oh, yeah,
who
what
are you-
happens?
Only God knows. At that point, we just look at it. We find out as time goes, like, yeah,
Yeah.
because sometimes these solar panels, they don't work as well, and then you need to send someone to fix them, but then the company is bankrupt. So that creates other problems. Yeah, pretty much, So yeah, when you have solar panels, be ready to negotiate. I mean, most likely there's gonna be some price adjustments that needs to happen down the line. Especially when you're kind of like looking at these agreements. I mean, you want to try to make them attractive, but sometimes they're not, and then you gotta choose your battles essentially. And then also talk to your seller about doing some incentives for the buyer so that they can take him over. Just be ready to have that conversation. Sometimes it can help to give some sort of credits for the buyer to take over those lease agreements. Maybe that could sway the buyer into taking them over. Any questions? All right. As always, make sure that you talk to your lawyer, talk to your title company, let them know this is happening, what should we do? I mean, your broker as well, Carrie now has probably a lot of experience now with solar panel. So when you get those contracts, make sure that you review them and then have someone else review them as well. If you want to have me review them, I'm happy to do it. And I'm sure Carrie can also, take a look at them, and then, see where the problem is. But, they're not pretty as well. They're just, all of them have problems really. Any questions? And finally, that was my last slide. If you guys have any questions, my number is there. You can find me on Instagram, and also you have my email as well. But that's kind of like
Okay, so I have one.
Sure.
Okay, let's talk really quick about the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
PACE loans.
Yes.
So PACE loans, can you explain to everybody what a PACE loan is and what a nightmare is going to be when people start knowing about they are?
So, PACE loans is really more of it's kind of like an energy. It's usually designed for these energy companies that want to finance something that's energy related. I haven't really worked on those as much. Luckily, I've steered away.
I'm so scared when I
But-
realized that we can use them.
Yeah, but it's, they're pretty bad as well. Yeah.
Because they're
yeah.
used more in South Florida, right?
Yes.
And they can use them for like fixing your windows and like doing any kind of
Energy
like, house
related,
improvement kind of thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when the solar panel companies realized that they could use PACE loans,
Mhm.
they attach to your taxes.
Yeah, that's the part, yeah, the tax part. So basically, it becomes part of your tax bill.
You'll never get financing because no
right.
secondary, no lender's gonna go second to a tax
So
loan.
that's, yeah.
Right,
No.
right,
So you'll never be able to sell a house
right.
that has solar panels on a tax loan. Could you imagine 40,000 or 70,000 or whatever,
Yeah.
80,000, whatever you're
Yeah.
talking about, on a tax loan? So that seller would have to pay that off. Like Shane had one and he had to tell him I couldn't sell the house. Because if the seller can't pay off that PACE loan, you have to get a cash buyer.
Right. And
So then these slimy salespeople realize
So
that they can get these people to get approved for a PACE
Right.
loan, we're out of luck.
the seller can pay it off at closing and
Has
I don't
to.
have a problem. Has to.
Can they pay that
If
off
it's
at
a
closing
cash
and PACE
buyer-
loan?
sure,
Okay, yeah,
yeah, I don't see why not,
If
yeah.
it's a cash buyer,
you're okay.
then the loan gets paid off by the cash of the buyer.
No, that, and if you have a cash buyer, you can keep it. He can keep his $80,000 tax. Who wants to close on a house that has taxes of $80,000?
Mhm.
I mean, I wouldn't, but that's the thing. That's what the PACE loan does. It attaches the loan to your taxes, like a CDD would.
Right. Yeah,
And they're harder to
That's,
disclose. So if that's the case, if you have a solar panel loan attached to a PACE loan, you have to do two addendas. You have to do the PACE addenda, which is actually an addenda Florida Bar Association came up with, and a solar panel addenda. That's a double disclosure,
Mhm.
guys.
yeah, so the PACE ones, you see them a lot of times in South Florida and also
Yeah.
the coast as well too.
Ugh,
Because, typically those involve, when they have hurricanes and all
yeah,
that.
which makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense, yeah, and you
That
don't have a
I
lot of options,
understand.
yeah.
But if the solar panel
Mm.
people figure that
Mm.
out, we're in trouble.
Mm.
Cause they're ready to sell your mama down the river, so
Mhm.
imagine. Mhm.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it sounds like now, there still are lenders who are willing to finance the solar panels. Because they get, it's a pretty good deal, I
Oh,
mean,
I'm sure.
it's,
Making some good interest, I'm sure. of.
yeah, great interest, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are prepayment penalties too.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure prepayment
so-
penalties. You guys should look at that too.
Right, so that's kind of, so they're still pretty, talking about, yeah, the PACE loans are the worst.
The solar panel addenda, can you unstop sharing for
Yeah.
a second? And then I'll show you where that is.
At the bottom or is it the green?
Just need to get out.
Oh, no, I think.
You can? Okay.
No, I-
Oh, no, I see. Come on.
Gary, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now? Okay. What is happening here? This is a weird. What is on my screen? What is wrong with my screen?
Can you make it presenter? Maybe you have to.
No, I didn't. Desktop. Google Chrome. Why does my Google Chrome look like that? That is very strange. No, that's super weird. Okay, why is it showing that one? Stop share. I don't know why it's showing that. Let me see if I go here. I don't know why my Chrome is looking like that.
Carrie, while you're doing that, are there agents
Okay, there
here
it
that
is.
would not take a listing because of solar panels?
It's just not showing it big. I don't know. Well, we're just gonna see it little then. Screen share. All right, so if you go to dot loop, you guys can see dot loop. And you go over here under templates. And you will see, I have one called solar attorney addenda, you're right. Attorney addendas. Solar panel addenda. And here it is. And you put down the information. The following terms and conditions are hereby included as part of the contract. Remember, you have to check the box other and write solar panel addenda to incorporate it into the contract. And then it says either you select A or B, you have to check A or B. Okay, if it's financed or it's included, and then you write who the leaseor or leasee is, and you put the information down here. If it's got an account number, the phone number, the monthly fee, if it has that, or if it's subject to a lease, you check C. Or if the seller shall pay off, then you check 1, or if the buyer shall assume the lease or the PPA, then you check 2. You guys see that? And then if there's an agreement with a third party for the sale of the excess energy, which by the way, Duke is no longer doing that, then you would put this here. And then it explains a little bit more about if, Duke used to be paying for the energy, if there was excess energy, Duke doesn't do that anymore. But if there is a company that is doing that, that's where you put that information here. Then it talks more about what would happen within 3 days of the effective date of the contract. The seller delivers to the buyer a copy of the existing lease, PPA, all of their documents that they have. Okay, so that the buyer has now time to do their due diligence. And then you check all of the things that they're going to be giving them. The age, the end of the term, if there's homeowners insurance coverage, maintenance, all of these things that you're going to be giving them. And then the buyer has within 7 days of the effective date to go through and make sure that they are comfortable with all these things, because this is contingent upon the contract. They can get out of the contract for this. And then they can go ahead and everybody signs this and agrees to it. Everybody good?
This is actually pretty good.
It's a good one, right?
It's a very good one.
Yeah, I get it from Phil.
It discloses, as much as you can possibly disclose.
Yeah, so it really gives everybody time to look through everything. And then it gives them also the time to assume that they have 3 days prior to closing to be able to assume it. If the buyer cannot assume it, then the buyer can get out and get their money back as long as they've done everything that they needed to in their power to do it. But if they can't get approved, it's not the buyer's fault if they've done everything. And this protects the buyer. It also protects the seller because the seller made the buyer do everything within the time frame. So they've been updated too by their company as well. So everybody is on the same page. That's the most important thing. So the seller feels comfortable knowing that they've given all disclosure, so they shouldn't be sued. The buyer feels comfortable because they've done all the right things. They've been given all the information, and everybody's trying to work together to get it done.
I think earlier you mentioned about having this addendum, but also putting it on the seller's disclosure.
No, the seller's disclosure is saying, let's say you have solar panels, but you have a lease or you have a lien, that you need to put on the seller's disclosure. So let's go into a listing agreement, listing folder. Because if you own them outright, attorney listing folder, and let's go under seller's disclosure, seller's property disclosure. It could negatively affect the value of your property if you own something on those solar panels. This is where they should be putting that.
Can we get verbiage?
No, we never tell a seller how to fill out a seller's disclosure. We don't tell them.
They're gonna ask, well, what do I put? I'm just gonna.
I would just say, if you have anything, if you owe money on a lease or you owe money on those solar panels anyway, I would put that on that seller's disclosure. Now, if they don't owe money, do they need to
So
disclose
like,
that?
I would probably just have them specify, like that solar panel addendum that you put in.
Mm-hmm.
That should be filled in at the listing agreement
Absolutely.
and have that filled up and then just say, please see solar panel
Addendum? Sure.
And then that's where all the information are.
Oh,
And
please see.
To reference that.
yeah, reference it. And then, that's it.
There you go. Perfect.
Disclose everything that you're supposed to disclose.
That's great. But we're not going to tell them how to do it, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't ever tell them how to fill this in. Now, on a contract, right? On a buyers and sellers contract, let's go to a purchase and sale agreement. God help us, and as is, but it's shorter. Here we go. You have to incorporate that. So at the end of the contract, right here, you're going to check other, and you're going to write solar panel addenda. So it's incorporated into the contract. Because if you don't do that, it's not part of the contract. Has to be done at the same time in the contract. If you do it after, it's too late. Has to be at the same time of the contract. So as long as you've checked it, you've written it, and you've attached it with the contract, it's now part of your contract, right?
Sure.
So can I ask one question regarding that? So let's say we put that in other, we put solar panel addendum. During the inspection period, it's their option to do their due diligence. After the inspection period ends, can they still get out? Is that?
Yeah.
That's one of the out clauses.
It's a contingency,
Yeah.
right? So if the buyer's not approved,
Yeah.
they have 3 days up to the closing to, yeah, exactly. So that there was contingencies. Remember, that's the whole point of those contingencies. So if you're a seller or a buyer, you're approved. But the point is, if you didn't put it in here, no. If you didn't get everybody signed in. Now, can you add an addenda afterwards? Sure, if all parties agree. But if you didn't put it on there and then all parties don't agree to that, do you have solar panels included?
No.
We don't know,
Carrie, can you hear me?
right? Who's paying
Carrie?
for it? We don't know. We have a bad scenario that I don't ever want to relive. Again. So let's not do that, okay? So let's just make sure that we add the solar panel addenda here, and we don't have to worry about it. Good?
And there's space where you can save that in the MLS or.
We put it under realtor remarks, and then we're gonna upload it as supplemental information.
Yeah,
It's gonna be in there. We're gonna put it everywhere.
yeah, put it everybody.
It's gonna be plastered. Where we can't put it as public remarks, right? But that's not gonna be allowed.
Somewhere it needs to say on that solar panel addendum, something about usage or not necessary.
Well, that's probably gonna be part of the buyer's inspection.
Yeah. Actually, I think that was one of the things that they had to look at, wasn't it? I think that was one of the check boxes, wasn't it?
It's like 11:30.
Attorney addenda. Under their due diligence. Grid tie-in, homeowners maintenance, output production, payment, taxes, utility bill warranties. I don't know. Listen, it's the buyer's due diligence. That's not our.
Sure. You disclose it and then they gotta do.
Yeah, they gotta do their due diligence. Okay. Any questions? Ness has done an amazing job explaining everything about solar panels. I think we're all pretty clear how wonderful they are. You can know my feelings on them. I love them.
Run and hide.
Run and hide, and do not send any solar panel people my way, so I don't want to go to jail. So my doggy's so cute. I'm gonna sick her on him. She's about 100 pounds. Dixie, get him.
Mark it up.
She's scary, but she should lick him at the end. But yeah, but she does sound scary.
That's
So-
what they deserve.
yeah, they do. They're mean. They're terrible. So, but if anybody would like to see that lease agreement, I'd be happy to share it. It is horrifying. Yeah, but it is a true thing. I think the worst one is the lease. Then comes the lien, to have the loan on it. And then of course to own them is another story, but.
Sure, yeah.
Any questions for Ness? Well, thank you, Mr. Ness. Amazing job. And you brought food, so everybody help yourself. All right, guys, I'm going to stop the share. Everybody online, thank you for coming, and we're going to end it now.